Welcome back to the Goheen Cycles YouTube channel and episode number 10 of the VTX Web Build. This is where things are actually going to start coming back together. We go from the bike is sitting on a stand to the way you see it now in a roller. I show you a couple quick tips on how I do the wiring to get all the wiring ran through the bars and make sure I keep everything straight color-wise without having to go out and buy each single color in whatever increment you need. We're also going to go through and slide the forks back on. Then we're going to go to the back of the bike, get the rear wheel mounted. We're going to try to use the Glenn's down under bracket, but considering the exhaust that's on this bike, the bracket will not actually allow for the brake to be mounted up underneath of there. So we're kind of stuck with having the brake caliper mounted right on top where it was from the factory. Let's go ahead and get started. This isn't a super long episode. You'll kind of see me fly through a couple things here really quick. What I'm trying to do is I was trying to get to the point where the bike was here on the ground so I could actually get it over to the lift and finish the rest of the assembly over there where I can stand up and do all that stuff. I like to keep them down here on the ground, close to the ground, plus it was on a cart and I could wheel it around. But now it's time to get it back on the lift so we can get it finished. So without further ado, let me go over some tips with my wiring and how I get all this stuff set up. Alright, so here's a little trick that I've used over the years when wiring up metric handlebars and wanting to run all the wiring internal. If you got a Harley, they sell the wiring kits that have all the right colored wires, and all the wiring has the right traces on it. So you know, if it's a pink wire with a white trace, or a black wire with a red trace, brown wire with a white trace, that stuff is already there in the kit. You can get them fairly cheap. I mean, I think they're less than $40. The problem is for most of these metric bikes, they do not have that. So a little trick I've used over the years is I go and I buy white wire and a big roll of white wire, and then I have some colored Sharpies that basically every color into the rainbow, they make them in a big large pack, and I color them in each one at a time, and once they're colored in, basically I know exactly what color wire is on the other end of that. So you don't have to worry about, oh man, what wire goes to this, what wire goes to that, because you have to solder everything back together after they're already through the bars. Plus, I like to leave a little pigtail of the factory wiring just in case you screw something up, and I don't want to cut it so short that you can't go back and change something if you need to. So, that being said, we're going to go ahead and we're going to mount all these factory harnesses back onto the handlebars. Once those are mounted back on there, we'll get those all taped up. That section will all be done, and then from there, we're going to go and move to getting them mounted on the bike. And I've already went ahead and started to put the master cylinder back together. The sight window's been pressed back in, and I have the new piston for the master cylinder all put together, and it's slid in place. I just have to put the clip in it. And then we'll probably go ahead and mount that on the bars so we can kind of give an idea of where things are going to go. After that, we'll get the bars mounted onto the bike, and we're going to move on to getting the front forks put together. Alright, so just remember, next time you're going to go ahead and do your bar wiring job, just get yourself a little spool of 18 gauge white wire, white primary cable, and I basically just go buy, I think it's, I want to say it's like an 18 or 24 pack of Sharpies. There's every color under the sun is in there, and you could pretty much make just about anything work. I only suggest that really for metrics because the wiring harnesses for Harleys are so cheap, if that's what you got and that's the wiring you're running, absolutely go spend the money on that. So let's go ahead and get the forks slid up in the fork tubes, get the bars mounted on the bike, and then we'll get moving to the back of the bike. Okay, so that was one side of the bar wiring. I didn't take the other side of that. It's actually an extremely boring process, but now we're ready to go ahead and grab the bars. Let's go ahead and put them on the risers, and then from there we'll go ahead and work on getting the forks slid in before we get the master cylinder and everything put on, because I want to go ahead and get all that stuff mounted on the front end with the forks so I can go ahead and mount the caliper and we'll run the new brake line. So, just in case any of you are wondering, these bolts in the top of this, on these bar clamps, I just snugged them for now so this won't move. But before I do the final tightening on all of these, I'll take one out, each one at a time, and they're going to get blue Loctite in them so they don't back out. So now let's go ahead and get the fork tubes finished up, and I basically just have to throw some oil in them, cut the spacers down for the progressive springs, and then get oil in them. We'll put the fork caps on them, and then those will be done. Alright, so as you can see, the front end's pretty much all together. What you just saw was me slide the front wheel on. Now that the front wheel's on, nothing is set. Most of you may or may not know this, but there's a procedure actually to set this front wheel so that it's actually where it needs to be, and it has to do with the pinch bolts and all that. Right now, I'm literally just trying to turn this thing into a roller. Part of that reason is so that I can get it off the stand and get it back up on the lift where I don't have to bend over to do all the wiring. It's up on the lift and I can actually work right in front of me. So pretty much I got to tighten the pinch bolts and the forks. I am going to go ahead and torque those really quick. And yeah, that's pretty much as far as we're going to go with the front end until I'm actually setting in everything putting pinch bolts in, setting the front end, getting the front fender mounted and all that. All right, now it's time for me to go ahead and start wrestling with this rear wheel. Make sure when you're doing this that when you go to before you go ahead and put the wheel back into the final drive, make sure you have plenty of moly paste on the gear assembly. You'll remember when we did in the final drive video, I also put moly paste in there. You do not want that to be dry. I always usually take anti-seize and put it on the axles. This front axle on this bike was extremely dry. It was very hard to get out. So when we slid the front end back together, I made sure I coated it with a good coat of anti-seize. I did the same thing to the rear axle before I slid it in. Now you're going to see I kind of wrestle with this and take the wheel, put the wheel on, take the wheel off, put the wheel on, take the wheel off. And what I was trying to do is figure out how I could get that Glenn's down under bracket to actually work so we could slide the brake caliper up underneath the swing arm so you wouldn't see it and it would be hidden by the exhaust. It's just, unfortunately, with this exhaust setup, that really can't work. So let's go ahead and get that rear end put back together and I'll see you guys in a few minutes. Alright, that wraps it up for episode number 10 of the VTX Web Build. Next week, the bike will be back up on the lift. We have a little bit of wiring we need to finish with the air ride. I need to route some wiring right. And I'm also going to get rid of the ignition down here. We're going to put one of my ignition kits that Vance installed. I'll go ahead and put it on the dash. And I'm going to use this location to actually put the air ride switch. So you guys will get to see that. After that, I'm not real sure exactly how things are going to flow. But now everything is going back together. Right behind the camera, I have all the tins, and they've all been painted. Everything's good to go. I have some wiring to do on the rear end before we actually get the rear fender mounted. That's actually, once I get to that point, I'm going to be extremely happy. The fender turned out way better than I ever could have imagined, and I cannot wait to see it on the bike. So I hope you guys are just as excited as I am. Make sure you check out our Instagram feed. Also check out our Facebook page. Just to let you know, we have some pretty cool little Goheen cycles decals that are listed on the webpage now. And also, if you're a VTX guy and you're like me and you peeled your emblems off your tank because you didn't like the big gaudy chrome emblem, I actually have created vinyls, and there's a paint mask available for if you're getting your bike repainted and you want the VTX, you want that logo on there inset in the paint or just on a vinyl on the side of your bike. I got multiple colors available. But make sure you check out GoheenCycles.com where all that information's at. So I hope you guys are excited as I am. I'm so glad to see this thing back on the ground. I'm going to get it wheeled up on the lift this week, and we're going to keep on trucking. Hopefully I can finish this out in the next 2 or 3 episodes, which I'm going to try to nail down in the next 2 weeks, and get this thing done before Christmas. So with all that being said, I'll see you guys next week.